There's that scene in the social network that I'm pretty sure has changed how founders think about stock in their companies.
24 million new shares of stock.
You were told that if new investors came along...
How much were your shares diluted? How much were his?
And that's, of course, not the only one. Hollywood is obsessed with that 51% of shares and keeping control of the company. But that's not how company shares, ownership, and equity distribution works, at least in the startup world. What sucks is that this is as confusing as it is important. If your company makes it or gets acquired or IPOs, those shares mean millions, if not billions, of dollars. And we all have to solve and wrap our heads around this when we know nothing, when the numbers don't yet make sense, and when we're just focused on building and launching and talking to users and not running out of money. So in this video, I want to break down how startup equity works. I want to explain it in plain English. And I also want to run you through a few of these scenarios. I've been working for the last few months on a spreadsheet that helps paint a picture, that helps you visualize what actually happens with your stock, with your equity, with every number and every detail so that you can see it for yourself and play around with it. It's available for free as a download on Slidebean. It's truly free. And along with a bunch of other tools for founders, which is what we do. That's the end of the commercial. Let's get to it. So the first thing that people struggle to understand about equity is that shares generally don't exchange hands. And for that, I'm going to paint you this sample fictional scenario of Jimmy and Kim that are starting a company together. So when they started, they defined the company is going to have 100 shares. That's an easy, simple number to understand. 50 shares for Jimmy, 50 shares for Kim. Now, 50 out of 100 shares means 50% of the company. That's as simple as it gets. Now, many people would assume that when a new investor comes in, Jimmy and Kim will take some shares out of their own and then give them to that investor, or technically sell them to that investor in exchange for the money. But that's not what really happens. In reality, the number of shares that Jimmy and Kim started the company with will rarely change. They are going to stay at 50 shares. What the company can do is issue new shares for new people. For example, an investor might write them a check for, say, $100,000 and agree on a 10% equity stake in exchange for the capital that they invested. Now, what the company has to do in this case is create some new shares for that new investor. Now, with some legal paperwork, 11 new shares of stock can be created in the company and then are sold to this investor. So now the company is going to have 111 shares. Jimmy will still own 50, Kim as well, and the investor will now own 11. Now, Jimmy's number of shares didn't change, but his percentage ownership did. He now owns 50 out of 111 shares, which means 45% of the company. Once again, he didn't give this investor any of his shares. The company created new shares, and that changed the percentage distribution. But there's a catch here. We gave the investor 11 shares, 11 out of 111 shares, which means 9.91% of the company, but not quite 10. And nobody likes to be shorted, especially when it means shares. Now, if you give the investor 12 shares, then that shoots up their percentage to 10.7%. So we've come to this awkward issue. We don't have enough shares to split to make this around 10%. And we can't have fractions of shares. And once again, 0.09% of the company could be worth millions of dollars in the future, maybe even more. So that's why, in reality, companies don't usually start with 100 shares. They usually start with 1 million shares. We actually incorporated Slidebean with 10 million shares. Now, if we do that same equation with 10 million shares instead of 100, then the investor would get 1,111,111 shares out of 11,111,111 shares for the business. And that's still not quite 10%, but it is a whole lot closer. Now, when these agreements over how many shares or what percentage of the company an investor gets are negotiated, it's usually not discussed on a percentage of the company basis. It's discussed on a valuation basis. Both the percentage ownership and the valuation essentially mean the same thing. It's just estimated differently. So if the investor believes that 10% equity in exchange for $100,000 is a fair deal, then that means that he's essentially valuing the business at $900,000. How so? Well, $900,000 is the pre-money valuation before their cash comes in. And then after the money comes in, the business will be worth $1 million. 900K was worth plus the new 100K. So if we take that post-money valuation and then multiply it by their percentage ownership, 10%, we get exactly that 100,000 shares, which was their cash investment. We can also conclude from that equation that he ended up paying about 9 cents per share. That's the actual share price. Now, as I said, most of the time, these discussions are going to happen around valuation, around pre-money or post-money valuation, but not around the percentage. And does that make things more confusing? Absolutely. But the reasoning is that the valuation number can be more easily tied to other things, very tangible things. A valuation should, for example, respond to the revenue that the company has or the profit margin. In an early stage startup, it should respond to the potential of that company for growth. And that's easier to understand than just a percentage. Okay, so now that you understand these basic concepts, we can actually dive into running some scenarios in our cap table spreadsheet. Again, this is a free download on Slidebean. All right, guys, so this is our cap table calculator. Essentially, what we have built here is a little spreadsheet and tool for you to run your own estimations of a cap table and different scenarios, not only in terms of how much equity you're going to get at the end, but even some exit scenarios depending on what your acquisition cost might be. Now, the very important disclaimer here is that this spreadsheet or any cap table spreadsheet, whether you're using Carta or Capshare or any of the other cap table management tools out there, this is just a reflection of your legal agreements. The legal agreements are, say, call it the single source of truth. The legal agreements are what determines what equity looks like, how the distribution actually looks like. That's all on paper. And really the cap table, as a spreadsheet, as a pie chart, like that is only a summary, if you will, of the legal agreement. But the legal agreement is final. What makes things a little bit more complicated is that sometimes those legal agreements are super long, many pages long, and super hard to understand. So it's good to have like a reflection or a mirror or a translation of that agreement somewhere so that you can reference it and talk about it and run estimations with it. But the spreadsheet is never the final version or the official version. That being said, okay, so let's go through this example. So we have Jimmy and Kim, again, each with 5 million shares. Space for other founders, but so far we're only going to keep it simple. Now, let's start with this round. So you can change the name of the round here. We're just going to call this the Lalo Salamanca round. And then this is the date. Now, the date is not necessarily important when you're doing priced rounds, but it is important for convertible notes, and we'll get to that. Here's new capital, and here's stock option pools, which I will get to in a minute. Now, the tool allows you to pick whether this round is a priced round or whether it was a convertible note. Now, if you remember, convertible notes essentially are an exercise, a type of funding instrument, or safes apply as well, that allow you to delay the decision of evaluation from today to the future round of funding. So if you don't know how much your company is worth, if you don't know how much equity this money will translate to, you can use a convertible note and then hold off until your next round to make that decision. There's a whole video, we've made a couple of very thorough videos on how convertible notes and how safes work and what each one of these variables mean, the cap and the discount and all of that. Please watch those because I don't want to be distracted by convertible notes in this video. It's a semi-dense topic. But essentially what happens is this, right? If you have a convertible note, your equity for this round, your 100K investment, doesn't convert right away. It converts until the future round, until the next priced round. And so this model, this little spreadsheet supports delaying that conversion through one or more convertible notes. But like I said, I'm going to keep things simple for today, and we're just going to go with a priced round. So as we discussed before, this is a $100,000 investment that happened at a $900,000 pre-money valuation, which translates into 5 million shares. That number didn't change for either Jimmy or Kim. 45% ownership, a total of 10%-ish shares for the investor, right? If we go through the decimals of this, we'll see that it's not really 10%, but it's almost 10%. It's as close as we can get here. Okay, so just a few notes that the little spreadsheet will give you is just some additional details on your general transaction summary. So we have a post-money valuation, in this case is $1 million, so 900K plus 100K, and then the price per share, 0.09. Now, the reality in the world of startups is that usually investors on any given round are aiming to get somewhere between 10 and 20% of the company, usually. That's pretty normal, pretty standard. Something that's almost counterintuitive is that the more money you raise, the higher valuation is going to be, right? If this company went ahead and aimed at raising, say, $500,000, then that $900,000 pre-money valuation would not make a lot of sense, because you'd have investors that would end up with more equity than each one of the founders, which again happens sometimes, but not usually in our line of business, which is tech startups. Usually investors are going to aim at getting somewhere in the 15-ish% of the company, which is, say, reasonable, market acceptable amount of equity for a round, so that you have room for other investors to come in the future. Now, how does that happen? Well, essentially, if you're able to raise more money, it's because your valuation is higher, right? Again, that sounds counterintuitive. But in this case, for example, a round of 500K on a 3.5 million pre-money valuation, which would translate into a 4 million post-money valuation, that translates into about 12.5% equity, which is not a crazy amount of equity. It is normal. This is actually, arguably a good deal. Now, again, something that's counterintuitive here is that if you are raising money outside of a major city or outside of the States, your valuations tend to be lower because the money that you need is less, right? So, we raised our first round in Costa Rica, where 250K provided us with about 12, 18 months of runway, and more importantly, reaching the milestone that we wanted to reach. But if you're in San Francisco, 250K, you can burn through that in like 6 months. So you're probably going to have to raise closer to $1 million or more, which means that your valuation is higher. Honestly, in many ways, simply because you're based in a more expensive city. Okay. But anyway, let's go through what happens after a second round of funding, right? So let's say that this company raised, let's round that up to like $5 million pre-money valuation and something like 800K in equity, right? This would translate to about 13.7, which is not an unreasonable amount. This is how your equity distribution looks like today. Again, number of shares for each one of the founders didn't really change. So let's go to a next round. In this case, if we could call this round a seed round, then let's call this a Series A. Now, again, the date here is not particularly important if you're doing price rounds, because the difference with price rounds and convertible notes is that you're going to have interest rates, and then those interests accrue over time, and that's why you need a date to estimate if you're using the convertible note functionality, which we're not doing today. So let's say that this new round looks something like a $4 million round in terms of new capital and a $28 million pre-money valuation. Now that would look once again into around a 12-ish% equity, which is not an insane amount of equity. Probably a good deal for the founder since it's on the lower side of 15. Now, one important thing here is that many investors will ask you for an option pool, a stock option pool for new employees. What is a stock option pool? It's essentially setting aside some shares, some company shares, so that you can distribute to employees as a benefit, as a retention mechanism, as a bonus, if you will, for good performance. And the way stock option pools work is that, in terms of investors don't want the new investors, in this case, the Series A investors, they don't want to buy shares to then issue new shares for the option pool, because that's a bad deal for them. Like, they're buying shares and immediately getting diluted. So what investors would ask you to do is to create the stock option pool before the round comes in, so that the stock option pool happens or comes out of the shares of the previous investors, the ones that were there before that, right? So the model actually takes that in. So let's say that this company wants to create 100,000 stock as a stock option pool. So the way that works is that translates into about 0.75% of the company today, like at this stage, which isn't really that much equity. So we probably want to go up a little bit with that. Let's maybe set that up to 500,000 shares of stock. That's 3% of the company, maybe a little more. Let's round it up to 1 million. Okay, so essentially what the company is issuing alongside the round, or before the round technically, is issuing around 1 million shares of stock, and then issuing another 1,800,000 shares for the Series A investors. That again represents 12.50% of the company. By this time, the founders are now diluted to around 35% of the company each, or around 69, almost 70% total, which is not unreasonable by any means, considering that they have raised 800,000 and $4 million, almost $5 million total. This is the new number of shares, and once again, the number of shares doesn't change. Everybody has the same amount of shares. The big difference here is what percentage of the total number of shares this represents. I'm going to go through one more just for simplicity's sake and just not to get too caught up. Like, this model will allow you to run up to 5 different rounds of funding. Again, a combination of price rounds and equity rounds. We're not going to get into the details of how fast this company needs to be growing to go from raising 4 million to raising 20 million, but it's obviously a very fast growing company. It's also not crazy to think that by the time you go from Series A to Series B, your option pool ran out. You've already recruited some very key talent, and you have that with your team. You've issued all of those stock options, so you might need to create a new stock option pool on the new round. In this case, again, this is just an example. We're going to use a $20 million round on a $140 million valuation for this Series B, which is probably pretty high, landing in around 12%. Let's actually lower this a little bit. Let's round that to about $100 million of valuation. Whoops, zero more. There. So this is 16% of the company. Not crazy. That's 17 million shares that the company has issued so far. 5 million shares, again, still for the founders. 27%, 28% for each. That's a 55%, 54% almost equity stake for both of the founders, Jimmy and Kim. Okay, so let's go through some scenarios as to like what happens if the company gets acquired at any of these points. It's almost simple to understand for original shareholders, but for stock options, it's kind of like a cool exercise. We have a whole video on how stock options work, by the way. I'm going to link that in the description in case you need it. Okay. So one important thing to look at for stock options here is the price per share. So remember that we estimated the price per share, so the price that each of the investors paid for the shares that they bought, right? So this first round of investment, which was 1.6 million shares, bought at $800,000 as an investment, you ended up paying 50 cents per share, right? In this next round, the investors ended up paying $2.2 per share. And this round, $6.71 per share. So that price per share at the time that the round closes establishes the strike price for the stock option pool. It essentially says, if you give any of these employees at Series A or Series B the stock option that you are offering them, if you give them those shares, say that you have an employee, you want to give them 10,000 shares, and you give them 10,000 shares on a $2.2 price per share, you're essentially giving them a package of $22,000. And those $22,000 would be taxable. So they would have to pay tax on the equity that they receive, but that they can't really change or cash in just yet because the company hasn't gone public or been acquired. So it's a tax burden that nobody wants to go through unless the company is actually getting an exit. So the way stock options work, and the reason why they're very useful, is what companies are really doing is offering employees the chance to buy shares at this valuation, at the valuation in which they receive them. So in this case, for the stock option holders of the Series A, again, 1 million shares, this is hopefully multiple people, they're given the right to buy stock at $2.2 per share. But even a few years later, on the next round, you have stock that is now worth $6.7 per share. So they can essentially buy shares, each one of their stock option pools, each one of their stock. They can buy it at $2.2 and then sell it again at $6.71. So that is the increase in value. And stock option pools are very cool because they're only valuable if the company increases in value. If the price per share for the company stays at 2.2, then that stock option pool isn't really useful for anything. And again, the way we've built this allows you to estimate what's going to happen in the future. Just to reference this, if you do convertible notes, the model will automatically estimate the time passed between the convertible notes, how much accrued interest happened between one round and the other, allowing you to estimate how much that round will convert to. But again, this makes a whole more sense if you watch our convertible notes video. But let's look at some exit scenarios just to kind of wrap up this with the model. So let's look at our last round of funding. So this company raised a Series B round on a $100 million valuation. So let's say that immediately after, or short after that valuation, short after that round, the company finally finds a buyer. So it's not aiming to go public. It's just aiming to give, every investor or everybody a good ROI, return on investment. So let's look at that scenario. Let's assume that right after Series B, the company gets acquired at $200 million, so twice as much as the last valuation. That is a good deal for everyone as long as this happened not too long after the Series B. So this is the stage where we're currently in. We're going to ignore the yellow, we're going to ignore the pink. We're just going to stick with the green. That is the stage in which we're in, which is once again Series B, the last round that we typed any information for. So everybody still, like founders still have 5 million shares each. The first round of investors still has 1,600,000 shares each, and so on and so forth for everybody. Same for the stock option pool holders and everyone. Now, that means that the price per share, assuming that the company has 17 million shares, the price per share in this case is $11.19. That is what the buyers are willing to pay per share, the acquiring company. So what happens with that? Well, we can remember that the strike price at which, or the last valuation for the company was $6.71 per share. That is the price that the green investors, Series B investors paid for their equity, right? 6.71. So what happens? Well, for the stock options, what we have to estimate first is if there was any change in the valuation, if they're worth executing, right? So for the first round, there was not a stock option pool, so we'll ignore that. And then for Series A, the strike price was $2.2 per share. Now, what's really important here is now these investors are paying $11 per share. So that's a big difference going up. That means that these stock options can be executed profitably. So they will. Essentially, what happens when these stock options are executed is that everybody buys the shares, and immediately in that same transaction, in that same paperwork, like they don't need to come out of pocket with the money. Like in this exit acquisition, in this exit transaction, shares are bought and immediately resold to the new investor, and you make profit on the difference. That's how stock options work. So in this case, since the strike prices were $2.2 and $6.71 per share, everybody has an advantage of buying them. Like these guys essentially multiplied their value per share by 5. These guys multiplied by 2 or so. So what we can look at here at the very end is just how much cash everybody gets, which is in the end the question, right? We can talk everything about percentage ownership or valuation or how much equity or what percentage of the company you still have. In the end, it translates to how much money the company will give you if it gets acquired. So in this case, in this very imaginary scenario, Jimmy and Kim both go home with around $57 million. Not a bad deal at all. The first round of investors, who again, remember, invested $800,000, go home with around $17 million. That's a 22.4x return, which is great. First round investors, the riskiest investors, the ones that come first, are usually looking for 10x or more returns on investment. In this case, that was fulfilled, so that's great. No option pool for them. And then the Series A investors, they're making 5x on their original investment, which was, let's remember because I forgot, $4 million of new capital. So they're going back with 20, that's a 5x ROI. And then the last investors, the ones from Series B, are making $33 million, which translates into 1.7x return on investment. Of course, these guys invested when the company was at a later stage, therefore a much less risky investment. So it's understandable that they make less money. But that is essentially the game of equity. And like I said, it can get really, really complicated really quickly, especially if you have convertible notes, especially if you have variables like these, especially if you don't know how much the company is going to be worth in the future, especially if you have stock option pools given to employees, because I'll just paint a simple scenario. Like if your acquisition price is, say, $80 million at the very end, so something went wrong, you're struggling, you had to sell the company to essentially to save it, your price per share here is $4.47 per share, which is less than the strike price of that last round and less than the price per share that these investors paid. So investors on the B round will lose money. They'll actually return 70 cents on the dollar for every dollar that they invested. Bad deal. Maybe less bad than going completely out of business and losing everything, but definitely not a great return for investment. So much so that the stock option holders for this Series B actually don't make any money because they could buy their shares for $6.71 and then they would have to resell them at $4.47 per share, which doesn't make sense for anybody. So again, it's a mess to understand in the abstract or when you're just looking at paperwork. But if you translate this into a sheet that you understand and a sheet that you can play around with and a sheet where you can run different scenarios and just understand what could happen with the business, then it can become a fantastic exercise. So we've made this template for you guys to use, download, convert. If you find bugs, we have a community, a forum where you can post any problems that you find. Happy to answer them. I'm usually hanging out there. So hope that this is useful. Please let me know what you think. please post any comments and any feedback that you have about the cheat on the comments in the video. It helps it get more reach on YouTube. And we'll see you next week.